Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Broker Minute. I wanted to send out some information regarding agency, not only the disclosure, when that should happen, but how it should be explained, and then also when and how you get designated and dual agency forms signed. So as always, we're going to jump right to the forms because the forms are the ones who tell us all the answers. And we're going to jump first to the agency law disclosure form, which basically is the form that all of you, I'm sure, present at the first practical opportunity. This is the disclosure of real estate brokerage relationships. This is a two-page form. This is a form that should be signed by the potential client and or customer with whom you will be working. Basic breakdown of this. I'm not going to go into details. If you want to go into details of the contract, definitely check out the contract class that's on YouTube from yesterday. But basically the thing to remember from this one is that you are required by South Carolina law to present and explain to any potential clients and or customers the different types of agency relationships that are offered in South Carolina. This must be done at the first practical opportunity when you and the licensee have substantive contact. This form obviously being addressed to the consumer. So you will present this at the first practical opportunity to talk about that, and then you will provide them with the options they have. They can be a client or a customer of the firm. A lot of people, first question that comes to me when they talk about whether or not they should go to dual and designated is, what should I choose? And the answer is, it is not what you choose, it is what the consumer chooses. So you present to them the options that they have, and then in the event they do want you to represent them and you are entering into a dual agent situation, either designated or disclosed dual, then you'll have the proper form signed. So let's jump to the forms because that's another point of confusion a little bit right now. So I just want to jump into them and review them with you. So if you are working with a client, you have an agency relationship with them, and that client is going to go into a transaction with any other of the Keller Williams agents that are licensed with Keller Williams Charleston West Ashley, Keller Williams Mount Pleasant, Keller Williams Islands, or Keller Williams Key in Somerville, then you would use a designated agency agreement. The designated agency agreement goes into detail. Again, that's not for today. We did that in the contract class yesterday. However, this does need to be signed by me as the broker, in addition to the buyer and the seller. Understand that in this, the representation is clarified in paragraph 7, where it talks about who is designated to represent the seller and designated to represent the buyer. I need to sign this to acknowledge that you actually do have an agency relationship with the buyer and or the seller, depending on who you represent in that transaction. This is signed by me as the broker because this acknowledges that those two people have been designated. That was a point of clarification that needed to happen in there. So just keep in mind, with designated agency, you are not limiting the services or the changing any level of service to the client. That specifically states in the disclosure that by designating an agent to represent each one, with me being the dual agent, that there is no limit in the representation. And we are disclosing, though, that as the dual agent in the situation, that would be me, I am limited on what I can do in the event that I step in. However, they are still going to receive the same level of client treatment that they would in a single agency representation, which is the point of designated agency. Then, of course, there would be disclosed dual agency, which is the second form of dual agency that you would go into. A couple times that would happen. One, you truly represent the buyer and or the seller. You have a listing, a sign call comes in, they are unrepresented. They come in and they say, I want you, listing agent, to represent me. And they have discussed in their buyer's agency agreement that they're okay with you being dual agent. Then you would have a buyer's brokerage agreement signed with them. Then you would have both of them sign a dual agency agreement. That is not your only option. You could also not represent them, and that buyer could be just represented as you could represent them as a transaction broker to that transaction, and therefore would not need dual agent. It is up to the client and or customer once you explain that to them. The other times dual agency would come about is if you were going to be under contract with a person on your team, be a husband-wife team, or if you are in a large team and you have a seller and a buyer that are both represented by a team member in there, disclosed dual agency would be needed in that situation. If you have any other questions about it, please don't hesitate to let me know. Otherwise, go out, happy selling, and let me know if you need anything.